My friends, welcome back to... Was that a cobra? He did. Dude, even in the first game, he did the cobra thing. Yorkie, he did the cobra thing. Hey, we are back, and we're going to cover one of my absolute favorite series, Ace Combat. While hardcore flight sims were some of the earliest and most popular PC games of their time, I'd argue no IP has done more to popularize military air power in the living room than Namco's high flyer Ace Combat. And it's easy to see why. Namco managed to distill all the best elements of dogfighting and canyon scraping to an approachable level, and thanks to its unique Strangereal universe, skirt some very cool real-world drama without getting mired in the limitations or arguments that come with a real-life setting. What Jerry Bruckheimer did for moviegoers with Top Gun, Namco did for gamers with Ace Combat. Merge awesome dogfighting with personality and high stakes, but all with a distinctive Japanese or manga-style storytelling. Less gung-ho, a little more introspective, but certainly no less awesome, air combat. Which is what we're looking at now. No, not the PlayStation game, but the 1993 arcade cabinet that spawned it. This is technically the first of the series, but you can tell the DNA is already there. Like the PC sims of the time, it put you in the cockpit of a modern American fighter, in this case an F-16 Sea Falcon, but without all the complicated avionics and planning, just pure in-your-face action. There were 3 difficulty levels to choose from, which determined how many fighters or bombers you faced, and how aggressively they spoofed your missiles, forcing you to get in close with guns. Aside from being forced into the novice control style, it set the tone for the series as a whole. Acceleration, stability, and maneuvering are all exaggerated. You don't need to worry about energy management or lift envelopes, but you still need to understand the basics of flight. This isn't a rail shooter, it's not Afterburner, it's arcade flight, or Simcade if you're not counting PC stuff. And graphics were impressive for the time. Like Sega's Model 1, Namco's Polygonizer, or System 21, used untextured polygons instead of scaling sprites to make, well, actual 3D graphics. Ooh, aren't we next gen? Unfortunately, System 21 is still an emulation bugaboo. We've been watching Namco's official laserdisc of the game, but the good news is the sequel emulates beautifully. Air Combat 2 hit arcades early 1995 and featured textured 3D graphics made possible by the System 22 board, as well as some updates to the original formula. You now had 4 difficulties or squadrons to choose from, with one of them looking suspiciously familiar if you played Ace Combat 7. And you were given 3 warplanes to choose from: a pre-production Raptor, the F-14 Tomcat, or Russia's Su-35 Flanker. Functionally, they were the same, though they all looked beautiful on the big screen, and you could play in third person to see all the neat moving bits. Gameplay was similar to the original, though the controls were definitely tightened up and there was a lot more action on screen. Taking out baddies gave you extra time and ammo, as well as completing the refueling minigame. The final boss was an enemy carrier, giving you your first ground target, and the secret final boss was a black F-14, rather than the red flanker in the first game. Like before, you have guns which are technically limited, but not really, and usually between 8 to 16 missiles. Well, that's no fun, that's like believable. The on-screen display gets a really helpful radar and is generally more in line with what we'd see in later games. Now we're almost to PlayStation, but there is one interesting bit of world building I'd like to drill into. First game does have a bit of lore to it. After the Cold War, the military-industrial complex becomes so financially successful that weapon systems are sold as consumer goods to any buying nation. One of the fun parts of Ace Combat is that everyone uses each other's military goods, US, Russia, and everything in between. So while Strangereal may not have started until the PS1, I'd like to think we have our first bit of Ace Combat world building right here. Gentlemen, the economy's just too good. We have to sell to everyone. Look, even the developers said the game world is just as much imagination as it is canon, so hey, I'm contributing.
失礼いたします。ちょっと昔の悪い癖が出てしまいました。次に登場するのは
Which brings us to late 1995, where I, and I'm sure many of us, jumped on Ace Combat for PlayStation 1, or Air Combat in the West. And right from the jump, you can tell there's more going on here than the coin-op games. The juicy tidbit is Namco wanted to bring the arcade title to the home market, but found the PlayStation's hardware too limited, so they chose to expand the scope of the game. Now, I'm not really sure what they were limited by, especially considering what an amazing job they did on Ridge Racer. Maybe it was a draw distance, but I'm glad they chose to go in this direction, as this is pretty much the blueprint for Ace Combat as we know it. However crude it may look compared to later games, there's no denying they really nailed the formula on the first try. You have a multi-mission campaign to win back a conquered nation, you can buy and sell your own warplanes, manage your wingmen, and by the time the dust clears, you'll have bulldozed hundreds of enemy targets from the comfort of your own cockpit. It's also the first showing of Strangereal, though you might not know it outside of Japan. The Western advertising boiled things down to NATO having to take out some generic enemy forces, but the original text has this taking place on an island chain in what would come to be Usia, a loose representative of Europe and Asia. The Scully Islands need to be won back from an invading force, but using standing armies might get messy, so they go all Battle of Carthage and start calling in mercenaries, which is where you come in. This is Scarface Squadron, led by Phoenix. That's you, bud. Get those operations done and they'll cross your palm with silver, letting you upgrade your hangar and hire better wingmen as you go. And don't worry if it's all too much for one sitting. There are these newfangled things called memory cards to save your progress. Now, gameplay is similar to the arcades, although it's been slowed down, and you have the option for proper roll and turn controls. Enemies now populate expansive map arenas rather than spawning directly in front of you, and there's a lot more of them. Your missile stockpile is expanded to 65, which you'll need, not just because of the number of enemies you'll face, but because their homing ability is much simpler. Enemies no longer pop countermeasures like the arcades, but firing at anything beyond a shallow angle usually results in a miss. This winds up being a through line of the entire series, but it's actually a very clever one, as it balances the gameplay beautifully. You still need to dogfight your enemies, you need to battle them for position, but you don't need to worry about the frustration or the time it takes of a gun kill. You get all the excitement, the dodging and juking, with a faster game flow. You might thin the herd with a few head-on shots, but the core of Ace Combat is right here, fighting for that perfect shot on the enemy's tail. Light fighters drop with 2 missiles, while heavier enemies might take 3 or more, depending on their size. And you'll face plenty of ground targets as well. Infrastructure makes for easy money and blows up real good, but anti-air sights are no joke. On hard, enemies can take you down with just a hit or two, so it's best to stay on the afterburners. The good news is you only have to destroy primary targets to clear a mission. Anything else is extra coin, but you don't need to worry about mission rankings, at least in the first game. Really, the only bit of quirkiness here is the handling, and I don't mean the gamepad, although that's a funny story too. Analog controls are supported, but only in the Nijicon controller, which means you twist the controller for turns, but have to use the D-pad for climb. That's stupid, that's a mess, just use the regular gamepad. No, I mean hitting the throttle gives you a second or two of tighter turns, but since speeding up makes your turn circle wider, fighting enemies can be a bit of a seesaw as you're constantly boosting and braking. For content, you get a 17-mission campaign and 16 fighters to take through it. You get a cool briefing before each sortie to see what you're up against, but what really stands out is how creative some of the missions are. Until now, most flight games were relegated to the usual anti-air or anti-ground strikes, but Ace Combat introduced some real curveballs, ones that I'd argue kinda set the tone for a lot of vehicle shooters in the future. You have canyon runs where you need to thread the needle to avoid SAMs, an endless desert you need to navigate using landmarks, hidden bases in the mountains, stealth fighter ambushes, escort missions, and the first of what would become a series staple, a massive sci-fi boss you need to pick apart, piece by piece. And really, I'd argue the campaigns were just as important in turning Ace Combat into a phenomenon as the gameplay. Of course, gameplay is first, but the campaigns gave the game spectacle, excitement, the things mainstream gamers might see and say, wow, that looks really interesting. It drew in the normie crowd, the kinds of gamers that wouldn't otherwise be interested in a flight game. And what better way to conquer those missions than in 16 of the hottest warplanes available? Modern players should recognize everything here, though some of it is in pre-production form. All the US mainstays are here, the F-14 Tomcat, F-15 Eagle, the Falcon and Hornet C, as well as the Raptor and Black Widow prototypes. EU fans get the brand new French Rafale, Saab Gripen and Eurofighter, and the Eastern Bloc is represented with the MiG-29 and Su-35 Superflanker. If you like older classics, there's the F-4 Phantom, Panavia Tornado, and MiG-31. And for the A10 and Nighthawk, purists could argue, yeah, these couldn't really engage high-speed fighters, but that brings us to the overall mantra of Ace Combat. This is representative of air power, not a simulation of it. Later in the series, we would see dedicated air-to-air or air-to-ground ordnance, but a through line of Ace Combat is your stockpile of generic guided missiles. These can take on everything from bombers to battleships, so you can enjoy the entire lineup, while still representing strengths and weaknesses. Over the course of the campaign, new aircraft are made available, though your hangar is limited to 8 slots on your first playthrough, and anything you lose may not be immediately replaceable, including your wingmen. The good news is, finishing on Easy gives you free access to all planes, finishing Normal gives you access to all wingmen, and Hard unlocks free mission mode. By default, each plane is painted in Scarface Squadron colors, but there's a code if you prefer the original look. For presentation, No, wait, I want to contribute again. There's a neat little Easter egg here with the cheat codes. There's codes to give you money or change the aircraft colors, whatever, but one of them replaces loading screens with a mini-game. You have to keep the emblem from hitting the walls, fine, but the timer is actually the little yellow chick on the bottom, and who wound up being the Ace Combat mascot. So I'm putting it out there, Nugget was foreshadowed all the way back in the first game. Don't agree? Don't care. This is my channel. For presentation, Ace Combat is, well, it's an early PlayStation game. Again, kinda odd considering how good Ridge Racer turned out, but that's not to say it looks bad, it's just simple and clean. It's like a mashup of the two arcade games. Objects are textured, while open terrain isn't. Planes are recognizable, though they weren't exactly throwing polygons at the screen. And it was nice and colorful. Really, my biggest gripe is you lose most of your HUD in the third-person view. Sound fares much better thanks to an awesome soundtrack and plenty of voice work. Kiko Kobayashi wouldn't be for some time, but these are still some rockin' tracks, and they come through nice and clear since they're CD audio. I mean, not to get sidetracked, but nothing could beat those early games that recorded music as full CD tracks. It took up a ton of disk space, but it was such a jump over the compressed stuff. Briefings are fully voiced, and you have a very caffeinated co-pilot to call out all the action. Having a voice in your ear is such a great way to keep these games from getting bland, and Ace Combat never held back, even going back to the very first arcade game. It's crazy just how right Namco got it on the first try. While it might have been neat to see the arcade game at home, it probably would have been seen as sort of a cool tech demo. I don't think it would have held up for repeat play, at least not the way racing does. Turning Ace Combat into a campaign-focused affair with plenty of new content, while keeping the approachability, was absolutely the right move. And it gave Project Aces a phenomenal framework to build on. Ace Combat would only grow in spectacle from here, but also introduced new twists to keep the formula from getting stale. There was always meaty gameplay to go with the flash and excitement, something modern developers don't always follow through with. If there's a game that might scare away serious fans, yeah, it's probably this one, even more than Assault Horizon. It is a bit clunky to play and look at, but never discount this was the origin of the IP as we know it, so a little respect for the console original. And thank you all so much for watching. I'm kinda on the fence about YouTube as the years go by, but I'd really like to do this series at the very least, and we'll see how we go from there. Whatever the case, be sure to keep going because you are worth it, and I'll see you in the skies.